judge here.
I like it.
All right, we ready to roll? All right, we're here today with the legendary Kris Gethin. He is a lot of things, life coach, personal trainer, celebrity trainer. I'm going to let him tell how he would describe himself.
It's very difficult because sometimes, if you're going through immigration and they're like, what do you do for a living? You just don't know what to say, really. So, yeah, I am a personal trainer. I got qualified as a personal trainer in the mid-90s. It was basically international health and sports therapy. That was my ticket to get out of Wales. That's what I wanted at the time. I had an avid interest in health and fitness. But I also do a few other things. I do have a podcast. I have a couple of supplement companies. And I have a gym franchise, and I have a peptide company. So, and I do other things. I'm not going to talk about it, but I do real estate. I like real estate.
Oh, okay.
My dad got into real estate.
That's what I do.
You do?
Yeah, that's my primary thing.
I'm not primary. I just dabble in it, but I have a fascination with it. I'm always looking to see what deals are out there. And, my dad read Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Okay.
And we were, growing up on a farm in Wales, and he actually applied that first book. He didn't have to buy the entire series. He just applied that first book, got an old cottage, renovated, did it up, got a mortgage out, a loan on that mortgage, got another property. Then he had like 60 properties, So of course I didn't want to go down that rabbit hole, but I learned a lot from that. And I just found it kind of interesting how he would always say, I'm paying for this if we were going out to a cafe or something like that. And I'm like, no, I'll pay. And he'd always say, no, this is Bob's money from number 16. He'd always think of that residual income from someone else as the money that he's spending, not his own. I thought, I like that.
Exactly.
That's kind of financial freedom.
And you make money while you're anywhere in the world, essentially, right?
Yeah.
As long as you got a management set up.
Yeah, exactly. And he would do a lot of the work himself. And it keeps him busy.
Right.
But it is definitely very, very stressful, I could see. But there was always this commercial that was on TV back in Wales, and at a young age, it kind of stuck with me, where it shows this person coming home from work. He's had a hard day slogging at work, and he comes home, he's absolutely exhausted. He just sits on the couch, and then his kids come running and jumping on him, and it's nighttime. He leaves at nighttime. He comes back, it's nighttime. And then you see the commercial kind of pans out. It just shows the outside of the house and the lights kind of switching off, and it said, his house made more money than he did today. And I thought, that's amazing. Yep. I love that. And it's stuck with me ever since, Even though I'm not an expert in that in any means, maybe I'll speak to you about that.
Sure.
But I just love it. I just love that way of thinking, that concept.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've been doing it for about 13, 14 years now, and just started from a single house, and then kind of got into commercial, like hotels, economy hotels and things like that. And then got into Airbnbs, and then kind of the next goal is to build, be a developer.
Right.
And so we bought some land parcels, and hopefully soon we develop. So that's the next stage.
That's the way to do it. That's to really make the good income, isn't it?
Yeah.
Get the land as well.
Yeah.
At a cheap price.
Yeah.
I've got an Airbnb up here on the bench. I've got long-term rentals.
Okay.
We got a property overseas. We just got one in Mexico that we're going to start.
Oh, nice.
Airbnb out as well.
Okay.
So we're dabbling a little bit like that. And I've invested with other people that know a lot more than me, where they get like storage units and developments, like apartment developments. So instead of, if I have a little bit of money, I'll throw it in with them because, I'm like, I'm investing in you, not so much the project, because you know much more than me.
What's the process of buying property overseas where you're not a citizen?
It depends where you are. Like I've purchased property in Australia, relatively easy. If you've got residency there. In Mexico, I've got a property there. That's easy because there's so many people from overseas investing there. You can't own the land. That's one thing. But if you're going to, purchase an apartment, something like that, it's easy.
So you can pretty much lease the land long term and then build a house on it.
I don't know about that. I've never really looked into that. I know there's a lot more complications to that. It's quite easy for me to get residency over there in
Mhm.
order to do so, but I haven't gone down the residency route. You know, we purchased a property there some years ago off the plan, and the idea was to spend time there. And I've just got so busy, so overwhelmed. I've been there a couple of times and that's it. So I thought, okay, we weren't going to Airbnb this, but I'm like, you know what? It's just hemorrhaging money at this stage. I might as well Airbnb it and have someone manage it. So that's the route that we're going
Mhm.
down right now.
Gotcha.
Um, I do want to dive a little bit into your background. You had just mentioned you come from Wales. Obviously, the accent,
Yeah.
I could catch that. Funny thing is, I was in Wales just last year, and I had an uncle that lived there. Now he moved to the U.S.
Do you know what part of Wales? Do you remember?
Geez.
A lot of the words are pretty difficult to pronounce. It's like double L this and double L that.
What's one of the main cities there?
Cardiff, Swansea,
Yeah.
Newport.
Newport.
Ah,
Yeah,
Newport.
Yeah,
Newport.
yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not far from Cardiff. It's about 30 minutes from there.
Right.
30, 45.
Right. Cardiff is the main city, I think.
Cardiff is the main city. Newport is a little bit more industrial. I'd
Right.
say, right on the water there. Yeah.
Right. So I got to go there a couple of times. It's actually beautiful. If it stops raining, I just
Yeah.
can't stand the rain
That's
over
the
there.
thing. If the one thing that I notice from observation now, every time I go back, you watch the TV shows, it's all depressing and it's very drama, confrontational. And you think, God, you have the combination of the terrible TV and the weather. Everything's kind of small. You can see how people become very aggravated there to
Yeah.
a certain degree. I'm sure I was pretty aggravated when I was there, but now as an observer, you can kind of see that as well. But
So
the weather's bad.
yeah, yeah. I grew up in Seattle, so I could kind of relate with that weather.
Yeah.
And then I'm glad I'm out here now. So, but how long were you there till you left?
Just under half of my life.
Okay.
So I'm 52 this year, and I was there for
Jeez.
25 years.
Okay.
So I was at 25 when I left.
You look great for 52.
Thank you. The best biohack is get a wife half your age,
Oh, okay.
That's
She
it.
keeps-
Everyone says, what's
she
the
keeps
best
you young.
biohack? Is it the hyperbaric oxygen? I said, no, just get yourself a chick half your age, man. It'll keep you young.
That's good because I'm not married yet. So
There you go. There's a tip.
I'll have to find someone young.
There you go. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah. So 25. I was there up until 25 years old. Throughout the majority of my childhood, grew up on a farm, got a very good work ethic, I'd say, from a young age. Raced motocross from the age of like 6 up until 19. Well, 18 motocross. Then I had to do enduros for a little while. Didn't really like enduros, and then I raced downhill mountain biking for a while. So as you can imagine, I just had injuries basically from a very young age.
Wow.
So I got used to them, I'd hate to say, after a while, and you get used to the pain, the discomfort. So I translated that discomfort into weight training, because you have to be uncomfortable if you want to get the best out of weight training. And that gave me purpose, because I'd lost my identity because I'd just done extreme sports for so many years and I loved it.
And when did you start weight training? Sorry to cut you off.
Weight training, what would have been early 20s, because I had to try to keep my weight as low as possible for motocross.
Okay.
But this is the weird thing, I always had an interest in it. I'd purchased like the Flex magazine, the Muscular Development magazine, Iron Man, Muscle Mag. They were like my comic books. I didn't buy comic books. I liked a little bit of Judge Dredd and a little bit of Spider-Man in the early years. But then I just went on to bodybuilding magazines, even though I wasn't doing it. I just thought it was fascinating to me. I'd go, it was subscription back then, go to the newsagents probably about 10 days before it was going to come out and just annoy the people at the newsagents. It doesn't come out until another week and a half. But I used to read that front to back and just look at the images. And I guess subconsciously that kind of planted a seed for something that I was going to do after, finishing with the extreme sports, I guess.
What other extreme sports have you done?
It was mostly those that I competed in, but I've done the usual things. When I was living in Sydney, Australia, and LA, I'd surf a little bit. Now I've moved here. I learned to snowboard when I moved here, but then I took it a little bit to the extreme. I'd go to the Himalayas up Gulmarg and go heliboarding and stuff, and got a lot of injuries from that as well. But I love it. I love those sort of extreme things. It kind of makes me feel alive. So whenever my birthday is coming up. My ambition is I don't want gifts. I want a museum of memories. So it'll be like, last year I was in Moab and did the rope swing there, asked them if I could take my longboard and skateboard off the end, and just things like that I just find is fun.
Yeah.
It's the weird thing is I'm afraid of heights in a certain way. So if I was to stand on this table and like change a light bulb, I'll kind of get vertigo.
Really?
But if I go on a bungee, because I think the perception has changed, it's so high doing a bungee or jumping out of a plane, I don't have any fear from that. I think the perception is that you're so high, you don't realize that you can kind of fall or hurt yourself or something like that. But here, I couldn't like go up a ladder.
Wow. That's interesting.
It's a bit weird, yeah.
Yeah. So you said you had a lot of injuries.
Yeah.
How did you deal with the injuries?
I
I'm sure it's changed.
Yeah.
How you've dealt with them over the years since.
Back then it was just rest.
Okay.
You just didn't know what to do. It's like, okay, you've broken this, you've torn that. You're gonna have to take some time off. So you'd have to take time off until you could get back on the bike. But the weird thing is it never really bothered me. I don't know why. Maybe because you do get used to it after a certain amount of time. So when people do injure themselves, or they, I think the more attention that you give to something like that, the worse it is. You create this mountain out of a little molehill,
Right.
So now it's very, very different, because now we have stem cells, now we have peptides, now we have infrared light, all these modalities and these biohacks and technology that can actually help us overcome and regenerate and, repair those areas so much more. So I actually go to Mexico every year to get stem cells.
Okay.
And that actually, not only just to help injuries, just to prevent wear and tear moving forward.
Okay.
So, I've got scoliosis of my spine, multi-directional bulges in my disc. So I have stem cells thrown into my spine earlier this year.
Oh, wow.
I run a lot. I like to run, so I'll have them put in my knees. I'll take peptides that actually help with cartilage regeneration, because I don't want my cartilage to wear down.
Like the Wolverine stack?
No, that's more for soft tissue, like connective tendons, ligaments, muscles, stuff like that. Cartilax, and there's another product which is an oral called Nova Cartilage. They actually work with cartilage specifically. So when I was snowboarding about a year and a half ago, I knocked a big chunk of cartilage out of my shoulder. I didn't know what to do. I spoke to a surgeon in New York that does 3D printing of cartilage. Stem cells wouldn't work for that. And I actually, my last resort, which probably should have been my first, was peptides. I did a cycle of peptides within 4 weeks. And I couldn't move my arm at all. Within 4 weeks, it was fixed. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I do want to touch upon the stem cells. Can you give a brief description to like our audience, like what stem cells actually are? Yeah.
So stem cells they're basically within all of our cells in our body. We have trillions of cells. And just put it simply, if you're a kid or you have a kid, they fall over, they get bruised. Within a couple of days, there's no bruise there, because they have a huge amount of stem cells in their body at that age to help repair, regenerate, and grow. But as we get a little bit older, specifically after the age of 30, or it could be younger if you haven't slept well, if you've led a life of drugs and alcohol, stress, overtraining, for instance, they all withdraw your stem cell bank. So we're always withdrawing and we're never actually putting back in. You can help proliferate your own stem cells to a certain degree, but that bank still goes down further and further dramatically after the age of 30. So stem cells, you can now today, you can get them done in the US, but they have different rules and regulations here to overseas, like Panama, like Mexico, obviously, Colombia, Costa Rica, where you can harvest and expand those stem cells over a longer amount of time so you have more efficacy. So I'll generally go to Mexico to CPI there, and I'll have stem cells injected into areas that I know I'm going to go through wear and tear. And then I'll always finish with an IV, because the stem cells in that IV will then take care of any inflammation that I may not be conscious of and localize itself to my organs, like my brain, my liver, my kidney, my heart, just to help with my health span. And there are supplements that you can take so your body releases its own stem cells. You'll get a lot of your own stem cells, like in your bone, in your bone marrow. So it'll help release them into your system to help repair and regenerate.
They're mostly embryonic stem cells, right?
Yeah, that's right. You have mesenchymal stem cells. You can actually have stem cells taken out of your own adipose tissue and your bone marrow as well. I just don't think that's as efficient.
Yeah.
Because your stem cells are only good as your own stem cells are going to be, unless you're doing a young plasma exchange.
And the U.S. doesn't allow for embryonic, right? That's why you have to go overseas.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. They can have different types of mesenchymal stem cells. They're just not as expanded.
Gotcha. Yeah, I have a buddy out of Vegas. He's an athlete. He sets world records for a living. And during a world record, he broke his neck and became paralyzed. And he was, had a bunch of surgeries. He was taking a fistful of medication. He just went to Colombia roughly about 2 years ago and got stem cells. And now that individual is doing flips. It's like he was never paralyzed. No more medication, no nothing.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah,
it's absolutely
amazing.
insane. Some people really respond to it well. So I have a client called Ram. He lives in Delhi.
Mm-hmm.
And he flew over. He was having major issues with his knees. Absolutely worked phenomenal on him. So then, and you know what people are like in India.
Right.
They can be very traditional, very hard in their ways. So it's very difficult for them to kind of step out of the norms to do something kind of experimental like that. But anyway, he talked his mother into doing it, and she's in her late 60s, 69, I think she is, 69. She was in a wheelchair. He got her to go to Mexico, have the stem cells. Like, she was literally in a wheelchair. Now she's a member of one of my gyms in Delhi.
What?
Unbelievable.
Wow.
And I was happy about that, but I was even more happy that someone kind of broke the norm and said, you know what, I'm not going to do necessarily what my doctor has told me. I don't know what the doctor told him, by the way, but sometimes they can say, look, there isn't enough studies. We don't know where the research is. Maybe it won't work or doesn't work. But she actually broke out the norm and actually did it. And I really, really applaud that. I was so happy.
Wow.
So stem cells, essentially, they just become any cell in your body that you need.
Yeah.
What makes those cells to get depleted over time?
So, it's usually dependent on that person. Some people will go through that wear and tear quicker. So if that person is like low on sleep, they're only sleeping 5-6 hours a night, they're going to not replenish those stem cells, so they're going to utilize them a lot more. If they've gone through a lot of injuries, like I have, every time you have an injury, more stem cells are needed now to proliferate and stabilize around that area to fix that area, okay? Or if that person has abused alcohol and drugs or anything like that, bad food, that is always going to oxidize that person, and they're going to utilize more stem cells than the average person, I train a lot.
Yeah.
I overtrain sometimes. I don't care. So I'm going to go through a lot more stem cells than the average person as well.
Is there any benefit from hyperbaric to preventing utilizing more stem cells?
Yeah, they actually help stabilize and proliferate those stem cells. So I always tell people, if you have stem cells, you should spend probably the next 2 to 3 weeks in a hyperbaric oxygen to really get the most efficacy out of it. But if you go to a place like CPI, they actually have you get in the hyperbaric oxygen chamber. It's basically the same size of a submarine. It's huge.
Yeah, how's it feel to be in it?
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. Yeah, some people, it weirds some people out in the beginning because it's like, you're pressurized like you're underwater. If you go really, really deep, you get a lot of pressure, but it's okay. But what they'll do there as well to ensure that you get the most efficacy is after each treatment and before treatment, you get in a HBOT, you do PEMF, like it's a pulsed electronic magnetic field, and then do ozone IV. So it isn't, and you've got to be prepared with your food in advance, because what a lot of people don't get right before they get stem cells is that they don't get rid of what's called their senescent cells, which is like these zombie-like cells that can attract and cause disease. So you've got to get rid of these senescent cells first before you take in the stem cells.
And you can't, almost cancer cells, or
they can turn into cancer cells. Yeah, for sure. It can turn into, a lot of autoimmune kind of disease cells. But the one thing that you can't do after working after stem cells is no training for about 3 months. Because if I was to then train, let's say, my chest, now those stem cells are going to go to my chest to help repair this. So you can't cause any inflammation, hormetic or not. So no ice bath, unfortunately, no sauna. Unfortunately, you just have to work on a little bit of mobility, more stretching. So after stem cells, to prevent myself from going crazy, I'll just do things like Pilates, a lot of cardio, swimming, stretching, mobility, just to mountain biking, just to keep me active.
Gotcha.
Very cool. And then for recovery, other things like things like casein or other sources of protein. Can you tell me? Do you know a lot about casein and things like that?
Yeah.
And for recovery, because it's a slow absorbing protein.
It's a slower absorbing, yeah. So casein is something that you generally take before bed.
Okay.
If that person, well, it's two things. Like I'll eat before bed. I'll have chicken, I'll have steak or whatever. But a lot of people have cravings before bed, so they'll go towards like a slow release protein that's like a chocolate pudding, for instance, and have casein. But generally that doesn't agree with a lot of people because the lactose in that, you'll generally have more lactose in a slower release protein. So we usually, like let's say after your workout, you'd have an isolate, like a grass-fed isolate. So there's no lactose in that. That gets absorbed into the muscles very, very quickly, very efficiently. The bioavailability is very, very high. The bioavailability on purpose with casein is much, much slower. If you mix it, it's kind of like a gel-like substance. If you mix isolate, it's very watery. It's very, very thin.
Okay. I wanted to kind of dive into your experience in India. I noticed when I first saw you, you were wearing a kada.
Yeah.
Tell me a little story behind that. Where'd you get the kada from?
So I got it from...
Because the reason is most people in the U.S. don't even know what a kada is, let alone know what a Sikh is.
Oh, right. Okay, got it. Yeah, well, I've spent so much time there. I know it inside out. And I'll be heading to the Golden Temple again now in about 3 weeks' time.
Okay.
So I go to Jalandhar. I've got a gym there in Jalandhar. So whenever I'm there, we go to the All Girls Orphanage. It's one of the places that I support with my business partner, Jag, and we'll always go to the Golden Temple. I just love that place. There's just something about that energy I can't put a finger on. It's just with all the chaos that's going on there, it's just the most peaceful, tranquil place that has, I don't know, some sort of platonic vibration that you can't put a finger on. Like I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. I absolutely love that place. So when I was there the first time, my business partner, Jag, got me this.
Okay.
And I've just worn it ever since. And, since then it's really helped me out.
Yeah.
Like I remember I was doing an Ironman and this is my first Ironman. So I'd done an Olympic, I'd done a half, and this is my first full Ironman. And I only started training for it 6 months before. And I remember being in a swim, there's over 1,000 of you jumping into the water at the same time. Doesn't matter how big or strong you are, you're not winning that fight. You're getting punched in the face, kicked in the face. And I remember coming around on finishing the first lap, and this is like a 2.3 mile swim, and I started feeling a little bit anxious, like my heart rate was increasing, and I was thinking, God, I got to lower my heart rates, I got to lower my breath so I can be efficient and finish this swim. And I just remember focusing on this every time my hand would go into the water. Sometimes it'd be like, I don't know, seaweed or whatever coming up on it. But I just focused on that and just thought, okay, actually, I'm doing this as well, for the All Girls Orphanage. And that just really grounded me. And that's happened a couple of times now. It isn't just there. It's not jewelry. There's just actually something much, much deeper behind it.
There's a rich history behind it.
Yeah,
for sure. Chris, the Golden Temple, that's what they call it in the West. It's called Darbar Sahib. It's one of it's like the Vatican of the Sikhs.
Gotcha.
And so they feed about 60,000 people.
Yeah, I think you were telling me about it.
Yeah, no questions asked whatsoever every single day for hundreds of years.
And they clean it every day, don't they, with milk?
Yeah.
Wait, with milk? Why?
Yeah.
It's just sign of purity for just inter sanctum, but like it's a large complex overall. Okay. And then there's a lot of rich history behind it over there. And I guess that kind of leads me into the next question. Would you consider yourself a spiritual person?
I am spiritual. I wouldn't say I'm religious, but I am definitely spiritual.
Okay.
There's no doubt about it. I couldn't attach myself to any type of religion. I didn't grow up in a religious family. My grandparents were a little bit, not much. But I've never been one of those people to say, look, I'm gonna, I've never been bold and brash to say my way is the best way or anything like that. I'm kind of neutral to all. But I just feel that there is spirituality out there, and I'll attach myself to whatever feels good, whatever the vibration fits.
Okay. Has that helped your physical journey, would you say? Like in terms of like...
Yeah, because, I'm definitely a more, I'd say, energetically anxious person. You know, I wake up with a crazy amount of energy and I have to do everything that I can to slow myself down. And I'd say that's helped me find a little bit more peace and be more present. So, you know, before I eat a meal, you know, my wife will always say something to, you know, say thanks before the meal. And that will actually slow me down and me be more grateful for the food that's in front of me. I'm more heightened to my senses, I'd say, the taste, the smell, you know, the texture, etc. So I'm not eating that food in a sympathetic dominant state. So I'm actually resting and digesting while I'm eating those foods. So it probably does help me from a physical aspect, because I know there are studies. There's a great book by Mark David called The Slowdown Diet, where there's studies that show that you can absorb up to 20% more of that meal that you are consuming when you're present. Much like if you're training and you've got that mind-muscle connection, instead of like just having a chat with someone while you're training, the chances of you optimizing the growth of that muscle is going to be much higher. And it's the same when you're absorbing the food. You know, when people are rushing or they're scrolling when they're consuming the meal, a lot of the time they finish their meal and go, what else can I eat? The signal hasn't got to the brain to say that you're full or you're satisfied, so they generally overeat.
Interesting.
Does that have to do anything with aging at all?
No. I think it's our environment more than anything. Our biology isn't designed to keep up with the change of our environment. You know, we're so distracted, and we can't eat a meal now without distraction.
Yeah, right.
You know, we can't
always
do a
have
lot
a
of
phone,
things.
TV.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, you see it when you go to restaurants, don't you? And I've been a victim of it as well, where, you know, the person that you're there with has gone to the toilet and pick up the phone in it straight away. You just can't spend time by yourself. So I'm very conscious. I bookend my day without my phone. You know, I'll wake up for a good 60, 90 minutes. I don't switch it on. That's when I focus on being more proactive. So maybe mobility, stretching, cardio, things like that, journal. And same in the evening. I won't use my phone or any device for a good 90 minutes before bed.
Does it help you with sleep at all?
For sure,
Yeah.
100%. Because I was terrible with sleep. When I was in India, I was staying in... not Juhu, where was I? Bandra. I was staying in Bandra.
Yeah.
And I was staying...
At the Taj? Or one
No, just down from there.
Okay.
So that's where John Abraham is. And he got me an apartment right below his.
Okay.
There was mold in it. I didn't know. You couldn't see it. It wasn't obvious.
Right.
But that's where I got mold toxicity. So I was sleeping like 3, maybe 4 hours a night. But I'd still, because I had that mental strength, I'm like, I'll still be a warrior. I'll still out-train you. It's stupid, you know, ego.
That's right next to the sea, too, over there.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
So I'd always go, you know, down to the bandstand, go do my cardio and stuff. Loved it. But I had no idea what was wrong with me. I was gradually getting worse and worse. No one could diagnose it. And it wasn't until I was told about this guy called Dr. Spanaug in Oldsmar, Florida. I went there. I had every test you could think of: blood test, stool test, saliva, urine, brain scan, absolutely everything. When he described my symptoms, it's like he'd lived with me for the past few years. I couldn't believe it. And that's when he diagnosed me with mold toxicity. This is 2015. No one really knew what it was back then, you know. So then I stayed there for 6 weeks to kind of get cleaned out. So ever since then, I've been really focused on optimizing my sleep, kind of making up for a lot of lost time there, you know. And so what I'll do as part of my ritual, I won't do caffeine. I don't need caffeine. I'll do something called paraxanthine. So that is in my products. And there's an energy drink that has paraxanthine. It only has a very short half-life of about 2 hours. So I could drink that in the afternoon and I'll be fine sleeping. But what I'll do for about 60 minutes before bed, well, actually in bed, I'll read a book. And that isn't like a self-help book or entrepreneur book. It's like a detective novel or something like that. So I escape the reality of the day and the deadlines and the phone calls and all that sort of stuff. And it helps switch my brain off to lull me to sleep. You know, I'll take different supplements. You know, I'll make sure that I have magnesium. You know, I'll make sure that I'll have melatonin every other night. You know, I've got a product that has that. And then on the opposite nights, I take a different product from another company called Glynac Plus. So that's got glycine and the NAC, and that kind of helps switch off the brain as well.
See, I'm the guy with lack of sleep. You know, I'm always wake up at 4 a.m., business, go. Wake up at 4 a.m., business, go. But I'm starting to feel it.
Yeah.
You know,
and it'll catch up. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, you know, I joked earlier about my number one biohack, you know, but I swear to God, if you want to really help optimize the health of your brain, because that's the only time that it does detox is when you're sleeping, and all your organs, and optimize your biological age by reducing it, sleep is it. It's not the hyperbaric oxygen. It's not the stem cells. It's not the peptides. It's not the red light. It's sleep. It's the free stuff. But a lot of people don't put value in the free stuff.
Yeah.
They'll go to a biohacking conference like I'm going to next week, and it costs $2,000 for the cheapest expo ticket. So you know they're going there to spend some money. But I'll stay at that host hotel. There won't be anyone in that gym. There won't be. They'll be there to buy their health, you know. It's the free stuff that we devalue and don't focus on as much. And sleep is going to be it, bud.
Well, it's like medication. We had a guest last week, and it was the same situation. You know, people have an issue with their health. They go to the doctor, medication. You know, have a different issue. They go to the doctor, medication. But all that health issue can be fixed with diet, sleep, exercise.
Yeah.
But people want that quick pill, that quick easy in, easy out.
It's convenient, isn't it? You know?
Yeah.
And
I don't get it.
People don't want to kill inconvenience. They want to be coddled to a certain degree and just tell me what to do, what to take.
Yeah.
What's your target usually? Like, what window of sleep do you try to get, or how many hours do you try to get?
I try to get as close as I can to 8 hours, but it's usually closer to 7.
Okay.
You know, between 7 and 8. But
you're not like Arnold said. He's like, sleep faster.
yeah. Well, I've got great latency. I go to bed really, really quickly. And, you know, I've spoken to a few very spiritual people in India who meditate, and they swear to God that, you know, the yogis that can meditate during a day really make up for a lot of duration of sleep. So there could be something in that. But I'm just not that good at putting myself into a deep meditative state. Like I've done like the Vipassanas, the 10-day silent retreats. And I feel like sometimes I have to go through boot camps like that, but I'm nowhere near.
Is that to help reset?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes, you know, we are, I guess, overwhelmed with.
Especially in the Western world.
Yeah. Like digital connection, you know, and, you know, artificial light and noise, sound, you know, it's just too much. It's dopamine overwhelm. So, you know, they have Vipassanas you know, all over the world, but it came from SN Goenka there in Mumbai. And, you know, I've done that where it's, of course, you know, you're not making eye contact. You can't talk to anyone, can't take anything to read or write or anything like that. It's just meditation from morning to night. And I really like it. It's the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
And you can see that by day 5 or 6 when everyone's leaving.
Right.
You know, but when you pass that really hard, challenging part where all your, I guess, thoughts come to the surface and now you have to face them, there's no hiding, there's no distraction away from them. And you get through that, and it's an emotional journey. You know, you start to look at everything in equanimity. There's no judgment on anyone else. There's no judgment on yourself. Nothing. It's just a complete detox. But it is very difficult to come back into society. You know, when stopping at the gas station on the way back, the noise, the sound, the music, the light. It's just it's tough. It takes time, but I think it's needed.
Yeah. For me, it's I go back to my village every year, back home in Punjab, and there's. Electricity comes about on average about 7-8 hours.
Yeah.
And then so there's internet is very limited to a point where like my phone works for like WhatsApp messages.
Yeah.
And that's about it. And then I make it a point, and then I lay down on a cot, basically. Essentially, I'm sure you've seen some of those cots from Punjab. So, you know, everything is pretty raw, and that's my reset. I make it a point to stay there at least 3-4 weeks every year, and I've been doing it for about 7-8 years now.
That's great.
And then it's helped me a lot.
Yeah, my business partner Jag, he does that. He's got farmland up there. You know, that's where all his family's from, and he'll drive up there. Like sometimes I'll be at the hotel, and he's coming back at like 7 o'clock in the morning. He's been there, you know, already, and it just brings him a lot of peace.
Yeah, yeah. No, overall, it's. I think it's always important to reset and kind of reconnect with your inner thoughts.
Exactly, reconnect, because we're so connected externally. We're not connected internally a lot of the time. You know, we're not alone to our thoughts. You know, you go and do cardio, for instance, must take the headphones. You know, it's never peace and listening to the sound of, you know, the stone or the grass underneath your feet. You know, that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about like Ironman training, for instance. You go out for a 100-mile bike ride, you know, there's no sound. You know, there's just your thoughts. And you can get a lot of creativity out of that.
Yeah.
People can't handle it, though. A lot of people can't be in their heads.
Yeah.
They need that social environment. And I don't get it. I love being in my head.
Yeah. Well, they've convinced themselves that they need it.
Yeah.
You know,
Social media did that.
That's a problem. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You know, I'll have clients, for instance, I had a client today that checked in and said, oh, you know, this is, she's an Indian client. Oh, I had to eat this Indian food, you know, whilst entertaining business colleagues and stuff like that. There's no has to anything. It's just your choice at the end of the day.
Right.
But I understand there's a lot of pressure there.
Yeah.
Going back to India, when was the first time you went there?
It was 2012. Yeah, 2012. So I just released a book called Body by Design.
Okay.
And I was asked to go over there and do like a book release, a book signing and stuff like that. And that was at an event. That book ended up in Hrithik Roshan's hands.
Oh, okay.
Because he needed to go and shoot this movie, Krish. It was like part of this trilogy. He was dealing with back issues and he'd been binge eating and smoking and he was really out of shape.
Yeah.
He read that book and he'd contacted a few trainers and then he reached out to me through my manager. I'd never heard of the guy.
Yeah.
I was in a supermarket at the time in UK and taking his phone call with this guy. And then he asked if I would help him to get in shape. And I went to India and I met him because I needed to ensure that this guy was, you know, serious because everyone says they're going to do it, but very few people do, you know, because when it gets difficult, then they realize, okay, there's too many sacrifices I got to make in order to reach the success. So we, you know, knew that he was serious, so decided to help him for a 12-week period. Turned out to be a 9-week period because his body just reacted so well. Just, you know, he's very intuitive, thankfully. So that kept me there for a little while because now there was a huge demand of other people in Bollywood that wanted to get in shape. Well, I couldn't train them all, so I started flying in trainers because the weird thing was that they didn't want to get trained by Indian trainers. You know, they didn't feel that they were authoritative figures and they weren't going to listen to them. And you know, they would tell them what to do, tell the trainers what to do. So I had to keep flying in trainers from overseas.
So there's a little bit of a history behind that as to why, because the British, you know, obviously, you know, they occupied the Indian subcontinent. So it's kind of left some sort of a message in the head, you know, like, hey, look, you know, like especially Caucasian males, you know, they know their shit essentially.
Right, okay.
You know what I mean?
Got it.
So there's that tradition is still there, but like it as newer generations go, it's kind of fading. You know what I mean? So that's why you might have experienced that.
Yeah, maybe.
Is what I've noticed as well too when my travels over there.
Right.
Yeah.
So what we started doing then after a while, you know, obviously traveling around and seeing there was definitely a need for gyms, not only just decent gyms with decent equipment, but an infrastructure to actually help with the education of the trainers. So that's what we've done now is started up these gyms that my business partner and I call academies. And it's basically just for ongoing training to help them learn, number one, you know, all that's needed in regards to transforming a client and that from a physical, aesthetic, health span, mental, social perspective. But also just to realize that you're in a professional position and you have to demand that respect as you are a professional because, okay, doctors are professional. We do what they say, great, but we're trying to prevent you from even going to see the doctor. So this is even more important. So you need to hold yourself very in high regard.
Right. I am been trying, because I grew up in the States, and I've been trying to reconnect with India for the past few years, like I said, with my village, and then I've been traveling different places. I got a lot of friends in Mumbai, and I was just in Mumbai just a few months ago. And so what I'm noticing over there is that there is a lot of like natural talent and natural potential. But again, it's potential. It needs to be pulled out. And that's how I look at India. There's so much India could give to the world. But, you know, they really need to pull it out of themselves and you know, do a better performance and just overall, that's what I'm noticing.
Yeah.
Is that something you noticed?
Yeah, for sure. I just did an entire podcast episode on this. It was just a solo episode all about what I've observed in India. And, you know, because a lot of people will say, oh, well, it's easier for you. You've got better genetics or things like that. And I'm like, it's not that, because there are some physiques there and some athletes and some clients that I've trained that have had amazing results, but they apply themselves. They don't give in to the social norms because unfortunately, like that person could be at a workplace and it's kind of looked down upon either at the workplace or within the family atmosphere, that if you take care of yourself, or if you want to work out, or if you want to eat healthy, then it's kind of frowned upon and you're an outlier, and it's kind of weird. So of course a lot of people want to fit in, especially when you're younger, right? You know, you want to be part of a clique, so you don't want to be that outlier. So a lot of people will fit into those norms that doesn't really fuel or help their future, or let them, I guess, you know, exceed their potential with the application, because the application is kind of pulled away from them. So that's one thing I think that we need to work upon a little bit more, just to help people realize that, of course, if you're at a cultural setting, don't think that it's bad to say no to these bad foods, because you actually want to help improve your health span, and then those of the kids. Because you know what it's like when you go to an Indian home, a lot of the time they will obviously greet your kids with sweets.
Sweets are a big one, man.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so it's
Gulab jamun is one of my weaknesses.
Yeah, well, it is pretty good. But, you know, that's an unfortunate thing where you show your love with bad foods.
Right. Yeah, like I said, overall, I'm people there are hardworking. Overall, if you look at it,
insanely hardworking.
Just if they the education, if it's there and they understand, you know, every aspect of like the health education and other educations, I think it could go even further.
Oh, no doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Yeah, for sure.
How'd you get it? Like, what made you even think about the Indian market in the first place?
I wasn't really thinking about it, you know, it's just by accident. You know, the book that I was releasing over there just got seen by Hrithik Roshan. He got this book, and it just kind of took off from there.
Hrithik is like a A-list actor over there. He's like when we were growing up, he was the actor that was like one of the first guys that were like really toned, ripped, you know, in Indian cinema, that like really stood out. Then after him, there was a few other guys like Tiger and John.
Tiger always used to train in the same gym at the same time, and he wasn't even into the acting at that stage.
Yeah.
So we, you know, I used to train Hrithik in his public gym, because he'd always train at his home gym. I'm like, no, we got to get out of here. Don't worry about people mobbing you. It's not going to happen, because people will get in their own heads, you know.
Right.
And so Tiger was one of those guys that was always in the gym. Great guy.
I've run into him a few times. I've spoke to him. He's
really cool,
really nice, down to earth.
Yeah, really personable. Like when we opened, or we had one of the anniversaries at one of our gyms. You know, we just invited him. Would he come? Sure. Showed up. You know, really cool guy.
Yeah, he's like the Jean-Claude Van Damme of India, or a lot of other things of India.
That's what I call an athlete.
Yeah.
You know, not only can he do those primary movers, he's just a gymnast and martial artist at the same time.
Have you done anything in the Hollywood market?
I have. You know, I've trained a couple of people here, but the difficult part is a lot of the time is that, you know, you're having to travel a lot to different places. And, you know, of course, if I'm in India, I've you know, stayed in one place, and that's perfect. That's good. But a lot of the time you're having to travel a lot, and it gets a little bit much. You know, I'm one of these people that's trying to reverse my biological age. When I'm traveling a lot, I know that I'm going through a lot of stress, oxidative stress, changing time zones and stuff like that. That can be a little bit much. So I'm not training anybody in person now. I keep it purely online. And if I do help people, whether it be like in Hollywood, or whether it be like professional athletes in the MMA world or motocross or anything like that, it's online, and I just keep it that way now.
So I'm just curious, because I've been surrounded by individuals from Hollywood. I've come from the entertainment business myself. Have you noticed a difference in depression? Because I've noticed that a lot of Hollywood actors have depression issues here in the United States.
Yeah.
Did you see the same thing in Bollywood?
Yeah, it's exactly the same across the board. Exactly the same across the board, because these people don't have freedom to a certain degree, or they give themselves the perception that they don't have freedom, that they can't go outdoors. You know, they can't say, hey, should we go and meet in a cafe and have a chat, or go to the pub? They just can't do that. So a lot of the time they're confined. And when you confine people, and I always say, I don't like to think too much, because it makes me think too much. I think they have a lot of time to think, and they can get inside their heads. And, you know, when got so much pressure to perform all the time and deliver and do better than what they did last year, it can really get to people if they don't meet those expectations. And depression is something that comes with it really, really quick.
Criticism, they have a hard time handling criticism.
Yeah, criticism is a big part of it, and they're very critical of themselves for the most part. And I think that's why exercise is very, very important for these people. Much like, you know, you go to prisons, they need to be working out. There needs to be some sort of outlet. You know, that is therapy at the end of the day.
There has to be some side effects to their bodies, their microbiology from bulking up, going down, bulking up for different roles, right?
Yeah, and it all depends the way that they're doing it. You know, if they're doing it in an unhealthy matter, then of course your epigenetic can change. But much like if you take a drug, if you take like an aspirin or whatever, to a certain degree, that will change your epigenetics. You know, so they will change to a certain degree. But unfortunately, a lot of the time when they do bulk, it's just calories. They don't look at the source of those calories. It's just a calorific value, and that's it. If they are looking at the source of the calorific value from a healthier standpoint, it's not bad at all. But of course, dependent on how much weight that they're going to put up, you know, there has to be context to it. That can put a tremendous amount of strain on the heart if they're not staying fit as well.
So you mentioned anti-aging. That's a topic I've been researching a lot lately. Telomeres, right? That's the reason we age. And there is an enzyme, I believe it's called telomerase or something, that goes back and fixes that telomere tail. Is there a way that they can recreate a way to continue fixing that tail, or would that just lead to an ongoing cancer?
No. I wouldn't say it'd lead to an ongoing cancer, but those telomeres are basically like telomeres.
Yeah.
You know, so what happens is that these strands, they just shorten. It's the caps to your DNA. They shorten over time. They can accelerate in shortening, or they don't. You can kind of slow it right down. Major reasons why people accelerate their biological age is, again, lack of sleep. It's stress, bad foods, bad lifestyle, higher cortisol levels. You know, cortisol in hormetic responses, like if you get in an ice bath, if you get in a sauna, if you go for a sprint, those are all good. When it becomes systemic, that is bad. So that's why, of course, you know, stress is a leading cause of heart disease, and that will lead to the onset of early aging. So, you know, there's various ways you can measure your biological age. It can be telomeres, it could be methylation, it could be the Horvath clock, it could be glycans, like glycan age is a test for that. So I like to do a couple of those tests every year to ensure that I'm going in the right direction. Because when I started doing them in 2015, when I said I wasn't sleeping much, my biological age was 4 years more than my chronological. But I've been able to reduce it every single year now. So my last test that I did at the beginning of this year was 20 years old biologically, even though I'm 52 this year.
Wow.
Yeah. So it takes a lot of work, you know, like I said, sleep is that, you know, you do have technology and biohacks, you know, these lights will raise my cortisol. So I'm blocking a little bit with my blue lights. The shoes that I'm wearing are grounding shoes. So I'm earthed. I'm taking in the negative ions as much as possible, because the EMF and the Wi-Fi is all positive charge. That's not good for us. We need the negative charge. So we need to counterbalance it. Like the phone cover that I've got in this fanny pack, they're all made of Faraday, so it blocks a lot of the EMF exposure that I'm wearing on me, you know, from my phone, from my device. Now, these may seem a little bit obsessive to some, but I like obsessing over it. It isn't an obsession to me now, because it's kind of second nature, but I want to feel good when I'm in my 90s, when I get to 100 years old. I want to still seek adventure and, you know, be able to hike, be able to work out. You know, my idea of life is just collecting this museum of memories, and I can't do that without my health, you know, so I'll do whatever I can in this changing environment to prevent the onset of that accelerating age from a biological standpoint. And that's why I always tell people age only matters on your driver's license.
Yeah.
And that's it.
There's a big difference between being 90 and in a wheelchair and 90 and out and about.
Yeah, of course.
So you hear the stories of this 85-year-old male that just had kids.
Yeah.
Like, and then, you know, of people that are in their 20s and they're struggling.
Yeah, for sure.
Because of, you know, health choices.
Well, it's a different environment, like I said, to what our grandparents grown up, you know. Now we're exposed to a lot more pathogens, heavy metals, like the food is over harvested, and then we've got the glyphosate, the hormones in the meats, and it's just we're getting compounded from every direction. So, of course, we can't completely avoid it, but we can mitigate it.
Yeah, so essentially those telomeres are going to shrink no matter what. You're just slowing down the process.
Exactly.
In theory, if we were to find a way to be able to repair those tails, is immortality possible at all in the human body?
Who knows? Who knows? I don't see it anytime soon, but we can prolong it for sure.
Yeah.
You
Do a brain transplant.
Yeah, well, people are doing young plasma exchanges now.
Yeah.
There's a woman that I know that has a clinic in Austin, and she's the first company in the US that is doing the young plasma exchange. So people are going down that route now as well.
Right.
What do you think the optimal age is for a human body at a perfect level?
I think it could be a century. It could be 100. Yeah, I think that's very, very manageable now with the accelerating of what we're seeing in epigenetics at this time. What has happened over the past 10, 15 years is astounding. So I can only imagine what's going to happen over the next 10 or 15 years going forward.
I can only imagine if we had all the beneficial technology, but not all the chemicals infused into our nature, we'd be living for a very long time.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Yeah. We're just dealing with oxidative stress from every angle. And that's why as I get a little bit older, I go much, much higher in the different forms of antioxidants and selective antioxidants, just to ensure that I'm beating down a lot of these reactive oxygen species that are accumulating.
There's an individual, I believe his name is Brian Johnson.
Yeah. So he had the young plasma exchange. He had to go overseas though and get it and pay thousands and thousands and thousands. So you can get it a lot cheaper now in Austin.
Yeah, he looks very, very young for his age. I think he's at like 18, right? If I'm not mistaken. 18, 19.
His biological age?
Yeah.
I have no idea. Doesn't look the healthiest to me, though.
No, I don't think so.
He looks like a transparent man,
Like an experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's investing a lot of money into that.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit over the top.
Yeah. He's the guy that invented Venmo, I believe, right? I think
something like that. He comes from Silicon Valley.
Yeah. And he completely hacked his body, but
I think I
it's
know.
like a lab. It's a walking lab.
Yeah. I do want to wrap it up here. Start wrapping it up. I have a question, and if you have one too, but what's your message to the younger generation? And I know that's a very generic question, but I kind of want to hear, because you've had a lot of life experiences. I want to hear what you have to say.
I'd say have patience, because now if we look online on social media, the attention span isn't there. People just see success without the sacrifice. They may see someone's beautiful car. They'll see the materialistic possession. They'll see the perfect body, and they'll want to take that shortcut. That shortcut could be, I don't know, they got to fake it till they make it. Maybe they're going to go on a GLP or something like that, just to try to get that model body or whatever it is, that 500-pound deadlift. That doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. If you're going to do it properly, have the foresight. But if you want to have the foresight, you have to start with the patience. These things take time. Wow. And that's the healthiest way to do it. Have the foresight for the future with patience.
I think that's great advice. You got anything?
Yeah, I actually have I guess it could be a question, but for people that are in the business world, right, the body is not essentially as important as the brain. I believe a lot of successful business owners, especially in the billionaire sphere, they're willing to sacrifice their body for the enhancement of the brain. Do you have any strategy to the point where you can maximize the most potential out of your brain the same way you do for the body?
I do it. I already do it. The way that I treat my body is exactly the same I treat the brain. It's no different to my heart, kidney, pineal gland, lungs. It's an organ at the end of the day. I look after my skin. I look after absolutely everything. My eyesight, I got 20/20 vision, thankfully. So my strategies are making sure that I'm not consuming any sugar, because you've probably heard that dementia or Alzheimer's is like type 3 diabetes. Too much sugar causes inflammation here, then a chemical imbalance here. So removal of that. No vegetable oils, because again, that's pro-inflammatory. Or any ingredients that you read on the back of a label that you can't pronounce. Your brain probably isn't going to recognize it either. So stay away from that stuff. But then there are cognitive enhancements, like we know creatine, for instance. There's a lot of studies now that show that 20 grams or more is more neuroprotective for the brain. Have your creatine. Doesn't matter if you don't work out. It doesn't matter if you're 80 years old. Take your creatine, because there's a lot of ATP in the brain that is required from that. And then, I do go down like the nootropic routes of like, there's a supplement called Go BHB. So I've got this product called CogniShot. So these are BHB like ketones that help protect your brain, gives you a lot of good reaction time. That paraxanthine that I mentioned before, it's a metabolite of caffeine. So that helps with memory recall, reaction time. It has all the positive of caffeine, but none of the negatives, like no higher cortisol, doesn't cause blood constriction, doesn't cause a diuretic effect, etc. So there's various things of that. And then you can kind of go down the rabbit hole of peptides. There's various peptides like J147, dihexa, Nupept, that all have these cognitive enhancement protective qualities. There's another one called cerebrolysin that actually helps people that are like stroke victims. So it can prevent things like that. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical practitioner. So do not take this as medical advice, but I'm just telling you what I do.
Any detoxification advice? I know that the brain loves to capture all the hard metals you put in your body. And I know sleep is the reason we need sleep is because it detoxes your brain. But is there any type of supplements you can take?
Yeah, well, I'd say for detoxification, I think the best thing that you can do is sauna. Studies have proven that you can decrease all mortality by about 43% if you do sauna, like 20 to 30 minutes, 5 times a week. So I like to go into the sauna probably at least 5 times a week. I'll take a binder. So a binder could be like chlorella. That's like a mild binder. And I'll take something called niacinamide. So that actually helps with the blood flow as well. So I've been increasing the blood flow. I'm binding any heavy metals or toxic load so I can sweat it out. Okay. And I'd say that is going to be the most important. Once a week, maybe dependent if I've traveled like to India or I've traveled to a city, I will do activated charcoal because that's a harsher binder, but I'll only do that every now and again because that will bind like essential minerals as well and you'll get rid of them. So you don't want to do that too often.
It's funny you mentioned activated charcoal. In my culture, I'm from Eastern Europe, and when you have a stomach ache where you get food poison, we take activated charcoal.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It kind of binds and catches and releases, And the other thing I was going to say from a detoxification standpoint is make sure that your phone isn't in your bedroom. It isn't even on airplane mode because you still have the apps on, you still have the tracker on. Just have it outside of your bedroom, no devices, because that EMF, again, will penetrate. It penetrates through steel, in an elevator or in a lift. So it is penetrating the brain and it does light up the brain. If you want the brain to detox, make sure that there's no devices near. So I have a kill switch in my home. So switches off the Wi-Fi, everything. I'm sure that you've heard of shungite. I just heard from my good friend Alex Kickle. So he puts shungite all around the house. Just get the powder and he'll put it in the garden, in the soil. Every month he'll do that. And would you believe it? Like he's got his house like EMF'd out. But all the animals come to his house. No one else's. He's in Pennsylvania. There's like a family of foxes that go to his house. And foxes are quite rare there. But it shows that, that the shrubs are doing well, everything. There is an oxidative damage component to EMFs, but because we don't see it.
It's the carbon in the shungite that absorbs all the radiation and everything into it. Yeah,
you got it. So
I have a ball that I keep around my office desk.
Perfect. That's great. You can actually get these shungite palm stones. You can keep it in, or you can have the necklace. Yeah, exactly. That's great. Like I've got this little Leela quantum that helps with that, but shungite's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is awesome. A lot of useful information.
I really appreciate it. It was good having a good good chinwag here. I really enjoyed this.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you for coming. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And like and subscribe. Chronicles and Customs on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. Thank
Peace.
you.
Yeah.